Earlier this morning, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison testified before a US Congress committee on China's economic coercion, describing Beijing's strategy towards Australia as a warning to the US.
While the CCP's tactics may have substantially changed, their objectives remain the same, namely to neutralise public support for Australian government actions to counter the potential security threat posed by the CCP, such as increased defence spending or restricting investment in critical technologies or sensitive supply chains.
Meanwhile, Defence Minister Richard Marles and Foreign Minister Wong will hold talks tomorrow with their visiting British counterparts as both countries wait for the Pentagon to complete its review into AUKUS. Defence Minister Richard Marles joins me now. Richard Marles, welcome to the programme.
Good evening, Sarah. How are you?
So, Scott Morrison is telling the US Congress that what China is doing is trying to neutralise public support in Australia for actions against China, including, and this is important, against higher defence spending here. Is that what China is trying to do?
Well, I think we live in an era of strategic contest, and I think what really shapes the landscape that we face is the very significant increase in defence spending that we've seen from China itself, which is the biggest increase in conventional defence spending that we have seen since the end of the Second World War. Now, that's what fundamentally shapes the region in which we live. It's happening without strategic reassurance, in the sense that there's not a clear articulation of why that defence spending is occurring. And it's in those circumstances that we clearly need to be making sure that we are facing the complex strategic circumstances that we are in the best possible way, and it's why we have engaged in significant defence spending to this point in time.
But at the same time, and I'm sure this is part of the reasons for Scott Morrison giving that testimony in the United States, is that we're not spending it anywhere near the level that the US wants. They want $40 billion more spending from us. But this is my question. When Donald Trump finally engages fully with AUKUS and with the Australian relationship, do you anticipate a reckoning on spending?
Look, we have made really clear, and the Prime Minister has made really clear, that we will go through the process in our own national interest in terms of assessing what our strategic challenge is, what sort of defence force we need.
Sure, everyone's heard you say that, and they expect Australia to do that, but do you expect...
And that we will then resource it.
But what does that mean? Does that mean that you will increase spending to the level that the US wants?
It means that we can point to the process that we've been undergoing, which has seen the biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australia's history.
When you met the US Secretary for Defence in Singapore at the Shangri-La Dialogue, you said Australia was up for the conversation. But are you up for I've asked you this before, the question about whether you're up for a conversation at the levels that the US has made very clear they want.
The process that we're going to go through is assessing our own needs in our own national interest. I mean, and the Prime Minister has been really clear, as have I, about that. That's the methodology that we are going to use here. It is about.
Do you expect a reckoning from Donald Trump? Because he's not going to be as interested in the process. He's going to want to know how much. And will there be a reckoning?
Yeah, well, people will be looking to outcomes. But the point I'm really trying to make is that the process and the method that we've adopted to this point in time has yielded the biggest peacetime increase in defence spending in Australia's history. The process that we are going through is every 2 years updating our national defence strategy. That's due in the second quarter of next year, and we will continue the process of assessing our needs. And the point I'm trying to make is that we actually have a story to tell here, and a story which has been well received by the United States in terms of what we've done so far. Now, we'll continue to go through that in terms of working out how this evolves and what our needs are, and then resourcing them. But we've got runs on the board here.
OK, but there's a whole series of questions, obviously, that the US is posing at the moment. We understand that the US wants further clarity from Australia on what we would do in the event that there is a war between the US and China over Taiwan. Are there discussions taking place between Australian military and the US military about that prospect?
Oh, well, the last thing I'm going to do is go into the kind of conversations that happen between our two defence forces, and nor am I about to speculate on, the future in that way.
I'm not asking you to detail the conversations, but are they taking place?
We work really closely with the United States, intimately with the United States on a day-to-day basis, and it is about deterring conflict. It is about seeking to maintain peace and stability. Part of the alliance is a deep organic engagement between our two defence forces, which sees Australians embedded at a very senior level in the US Defence Force, Americans engaged here. It sees, for example, our biggest exercise that we undertake every 2 years being a bilaterally planned exercise between ourselves and the United States, Talisman Sabre, which is happening as we speak. All of that interaction is deeply engaged, but it is about demonstrating an effect which deters conflict and which maintains the peace. And the last thing we're going to do is about speculate about conflict in the future.
Presumably what they're looking for actually is clarity as much about the political decision makers as well as the military. You've described all of those interactions with the military. But on the political side, they must be looking for your reassurance. That's what the reporting is telling us. Are your defence officials talking to US defence officials about that prospect?
Well, again, I'm not going to answer that specific question because I'm not going to speculate about the future. But our defence officials at a departmental level talk to America on a daily basis, and what I've just described in terms of our defence forces is replicated in respect of our departments of defence.
In those discussions?
Well, again,
you're not going to say
I'm
so.
not,
okay.
and I shouldn't answer that question. But I think the point about trying to draw a contrast between what happens at a systemic level and a political level. I mean, one is a function of the other. I was the first defence minister in the world to meet Pete Hegseth after he was nominated. Yes. I think there is a very close relationship at a political level which flows through.
Let me ask you a question about that close relationship. Do you know when the AUKUS review is coming?
Again, this is a matter for the Americans to speak to.
Know?
We are very comfortable with the process, and again, there is a very close dialogue specifically about how the review is
So has the Secretary of Defence spoken with Elbridge Colby?
I can't answer a question about internal conversations within the American system.
That's our Secretary of Defence, sorry. I mean Greg Moriarty, your
sorry. We speak to each other's counterparts. So we are in contact with the Pentagon and those who are running the review in the Pentagon. And again, we have a very clear line of sight about what's happening with the review, the time frame of the review and the way in which it will be conducted.
You've got the UK Defence Minister and Foreign Minister coming tomorrow. I'm a little short of time, but I just want to ask a quick question about the amount of money, the $5 billion that we have given to the United Kingdom, or pledged to the United Kingdom rather, as part of the AUKUS programme to help with the shipbuilding and the building of the nuclear reactors. Question, what guarantees do we get about how they spend that money? They've got some problems in their defence industry history as much as we do.
We will work very closely with the United Kingdom.
Guarantees is what I want to know about.
It is about increasing the rate of production, particularly of the nuclear reactors, because the reactors that will be in Australia's submarines that we will be building here will come from Rolls-Royce in Britain.
What sort of guarantees do we have about the money being well spent?
We will work really closely with the United Kingdom on the way in which that's spent. But to give you a sense, I've visited that factory. I've seen the plans on how that expansion is going to occur. I have seen parts in that factory which are going to be in the submarines that will be built in Adelaide coming off the line in the early 2040s. Those parts exist right now. All
right. I need to ask you a question about beef. Are we trading Australian biosecurity for a better relationship with the mercurial, ever difficult Donald Trump?
No. What we're doing is concluding a process which has been underway for a decade.
So what's changed in the supply chain in the United States that makes imported Mexican beef into America, because that's the question, safe now when it wasn't a short while ago?
This has been a process that the Department of Agriculture has been working through to assess exactly how that supply chain works in the United States, to make sure that the very strict biosecurity controls that we have in this country are met. And we're confident now that they are in terms of what is occurring there. And I guess that's against the backdrop of being a country which wants to see an open global trading system, because as a country which exports meat, such a system is in our national interest.
Richard Marles, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Thank you very
Sarah.
much. Today, we had the second question time in the New Look Parliament, where the Labor benches are full to bursting and the opposition is finding its line. Leader Susan Lee began by attacking the Prime Minister's relationship with Donald Trump.
Following the Prime Minister's recent overseas travels, has he had a conversation with the US President?
Order. The Minister for Infrastructure is getting close to being warned. We cannot have people interjecting during questions. Works both ways. Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Members of this parliament have a choice sometimes of whether they will back Australia or seek to undermine Australia. A very simple proposition. A very simple proposition.
7:30's political editor Jacob Greber joins me now. I saw you sitting in the press gallery today. Did the opposition tactic land? Did it work?
It was a tricky, or should I say risky tactic from the opposition's point of view.
Why risky?
Well, I think they feel they've got a line and length here on the fact that the Prime Minister has not had this meeting. And we just saw the exquisite agony of talking about a Trump administration in your interview that you just concluded, being able to talk clearly about it. Very, very difficult for a minister like Richard Marles. He can't talk about this review and beef and all sorts of things in clear terms, and this is the tension of this relationship. But I think the government found a way to turn that question against the opposition, and you heard it there in the Prime Minister's response. Whose side are you on? Now, the government can only go so far with that because that would antagonise the Trump administration if they were too explicit. But I think for voters it's pretty clear what they're saying about the opposition when these sorts of niggly questions get thrown at the government.
So in terms of the tactics, do you think that it has resonance in the community, this question about the meeting with Trump, or not?
I suspect, and this is the government's view as well, that the community really sees what's going on in terms of the way Trump has treated other world leaders. Our Prime Minister made the effort. He went to Canada. He was ready. He was all dressed up to see the President, and the President cancelled. So I think people see it in those terms. I think it's the next layer is when people start to worry about what that means in some of the detail. For instance, around this beef negotiation and the I guess you'd call it the bone we've thrown to the White House.
The bone we've thrown, I like that. Now, the other thing we could see in the Parliament today, of course, was Barnaby Joyce and his co-conspirator, Michael McCormack, sitting there in the backbenches in the coalition seats, the small number of coalition seats. We have seen wall-to-wall Barnaby Joyce and McCormack over the last 24 hours. I don't think I've never seen such density of
woe
interviews.
betide anyone who gets between Barnaby Joyce and a television studio camera.
But where does this end? What are they doing? Because they're claiming this is, about pursuing the people suffering from wind farms and so on. What's it really about?
Look, the danger here for Barnaby Joyce and McCormack, if they continue to pursue this argument, we're just raising an issue on behalf of our constituents that matters to them in the bush. The danger is this is an issue that no one is demanding an answer from the coalition at this point in time. We've just had the election. Australian voters have years before they come to this question again. So no one's sitting here this week saying, what is your position on net zero? Barnaby's jumped into that space. He's saying tear it down, get rid of the whole lot. The problem is that's starting to make the National Party look like a party of protest rather than a party of government, because net zero is currently the policy of the land. Getting out of it would mean trashing all sorts of international commitments. That's a big step to take for a group or an organisation of political members of parliament who want to be the government. And that's the danger. They start to look like, for instance, the Greens are often accused of being a protest party rather than a true party of government. And that's the danger for the National Party.
So is Barnaby Joyce just whipping up a kind of populist fervour, or is this about the Nationals' leadership?
Well, inevitably this destabilises whatever ground David Littleproud stands on inside the National Party. We know there was a challenge to his leadership immediately after the election. How strong his support within the party continues to be is untested and unknown. I do have sources who say to me that he's lost a lot of confidence of some of the people who actually voted for him in that ballot. We're talking about a very, very small group of people, less than 20, but each one of those votes matters, and there was a lot of unease at the way the whole split was handled. And so Barnaby is digging into, some fertile ground here in terms of political turmoil, and I don't think David Littleproud's thanking him for his efforts.
But I'm thanking you for your efforts, Jacob Greber.
Thanks.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming in.